All right. Hey, Brandon.
Yeah, hey Alan, we're back here.
And it's Dice Over Everything.
And I guess we went way back. We played some 40k, because we haven't played 40k together in a while. I know you've been playing a bit of 40k, though.
Yeah, so basically what happened is I got sucked into Warhammer 40,000 8th edition when it came out. So we'd stopped playing 40k for a while, but when 8th edition hit, I saw all of the blog posts and everything, and I'm like, oh my god, what there's like all of the hype train basically. They sucked me in.
Yeah, they were getting close with me, but I'd rage quit recently enough I wasn't willing to go back in first.
Yeah, so that was probably a good idea because I think they made a lot of really interesting changes that made the game so much better and kind of hyped me up. And they had like this entirely new marketing team, which totally worked on me. But once I started playing, I realized why I stopped playing 40,000 and why I'd enjoyed all these other games.
So I think what turned me off near the end of it was just how they were coming up with so many giant things that you had to buy.
Yeah,
to really to feel like you're playing the game properly. Like, why is this giant object flying around the board, and why do I need... Well, I don't think the Titans had quite hit at that point, but...
No, but it didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
So instead what we decided... So basically I've been playing a bunch of 8th edition. I was like, you know what, this is okay, but it didn't feel like as much fun as back in the day,
the classics,
when we played 3rd edition. So after a while I was like, well, why don't we just play an edition of 3rd edition and see?
Because we started back in 2nd edition, but I would not say that was the greatest iteration ever. There was a lot of basis around your characters that were nearly immortal, and they would just clash in the middle, and the rest of your army felt less consequential. So it didn't feel as tactical as 3rd edition did.
No, it was basically it was actually a skirmish game, which is kind of what we're playing nowadays.
Okay, it wasn't just because we didn't have the budget to play Titans back then?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, there wasn't really super big Titans.
No, the game just wasn't built to play that way.
So then 3rd edition hit, and we were super into it. It was like army scale when you have tanks, and they were important, and everyone was supposed to have a much larger army. And I think that's kind of our, I guess, childhood heyday. And so I was like, how come I just had a feeling inside that it was more fun than the kind of 8th edition I was playing right now.
It wasn't just all nostalgia.
Yeah, but I didn't know for sure. So basically I asked you one day, and this is what we're seeing right now if you're watching the video, is that I was like, hey, Brandon, let's go try 3rd edition and see how it actually compares to 8th edition, or if it was just rose-colored glasses.
To prove whether it was nostalgia or not.
Exactly.
So these are both Alan's armies going on the table, because as I said, I rage quit for real. I wasn't joking, and sold off my armies. They were all painted. Well, one army, but anyways.
Yeah, well, there was a big army, though.
Yes, it was.
It was like Space Marines.
It was nearly 100 strong.
Space Marines. So yeah, this is my army. This is Eldar on one side versus my Orc army. And this is the Orc army that I had started assembling during 5th edition, and then started playing War Machine and never played the Orc army. And so until 8th edition. And then I started playing with 8th, and it was fun initially with the indexes and stuff, but there was, despite all of the hype train of 8th edition, there were some, I think, fundamental issues with rules.
So the mission we're playing in this one, we're just playing the control the table quarters at the very end of it, which seems like a really straightforward mission. How were the missions in 8th?
8th edition, they're actually not bad. There's some interesting kind of ideas of Maelstrom where you're constantly changing what you need to do. So you basically have small objectives that you're kind of doing, right? Or you have a larger kind of objective, kind of like the game, the mission that we're playing right now. Okay. The kind of difference, though, is that in the main rule book, or the main rules of 8th edition, you can always wipe off your opponent from the table to win. And this is kind of very, very common.
Is it so down to the last man, or down to 0 people on the board?
No, down to the last man. Yeah, 0.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, this is not that great of gameplay experience.
Maybe they looked at War Machine and just saw the end condition where you kill the caster and the game should end, that you just don't even play for the mission, you play for the kill. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. But killing everything, that's a terrible gameplay experience. like on either side, right?
Where you just want to stop the opponent entirely.
Yeah, and then and then you have nothing to do, especially if you killed everything but one unit, and the guy has to play out his one unit. Like, that's just, I think overall it wasn't as fun. And so you see here when we play. Well, first of all, you see we were using the classic red stick.
Oh yeah, those
18-inch sticks.
So useful.
That now they have these 12-inch clear sticks, which is not as cool. Yeah, so I don't know. I found third edition. How did you find like playing third edition? And getting back into the game after so many years.
I kind of like the fact that things move around in a really simple manner, that you don't have to worry about weird movement shenanigans going on. You move your guy, they shoot, everybody does what you expect them to do. It's not like War Machine where things can teleport around, or Infinity where things can move a billion times. You kind of know what's going on at all times. Yeah. It's not that taxing of a game to play.
It was kind of simple, but surprisingly, I felt like it was... I don't know, 8th edition seems more complicated, but it didn't feel more tactical. And as you can see here, if you're watching, we're looking up the rules because we're a little bit rusty. We haven't played this in like...
I think we're trying to figure out how things drop.
20,
I think we're trying to figure out the dropping rules. Or the deep strike rules.
But were we trying to deep strike?
I had swooping hawks that you gave me.
Oh, yeah,
so
that's right.
We're trying to figure out how in this version they appeared.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so... but overall, it was pretty simple. And one of the things that I liked about this kind of size of 3rd edition is way back then, the armies were not as big.
So in this game, we were playing 1,000 points?
1,000 points. So it was 1,000 to 2,000 points. But if you look at the armies, like, these are not as big as the armies that you see in current 8th edition.
No, because I had one grav tank and a Viper.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You had what sort of big stuff did you have?
I just had a truck and a whole bunch of boys, right? And then if you were to even get to 2,000 points, which I don't think we ever played 2,000 in 3rd edition. We played 1,500 as the normal point size, and it just felt right. And that was like normal, 1,500, 1,750. Like 2,000 was big back at the beginning, at least of 3rd edition, right? And so the size just felt right. So you had like a big army, you had tanks, you had more than one tank, right? Because if we are 1,000, you probably add another tank. Like we talked about, what would we do if we moved my army up to, or our armies up to 1,500? You'd probably add like maybe 2 more tanks, or maybe some more and some more infantry, and then me. Just probably more boys.
Okay. Not make the army simpler.
I would have probably added some. I wanted to add some kilocans, but that wasn't in the rule book, because there's another thing that we did is like we went way back. So
we just played straight armies out of the rule book,
out of the main rule book. So something that was amazing in the 3rd edition rule book is in the back of the rules. Like if you bought the main set, you had all the rules to play. So in the very back, they had these like thin gameplay like rules and points for all of your guys, and that's exactly what we're using right now. And honestly,
so you don't worry about it being balanced or not, or who's got the latest codex. It's just sort of, all right, we've all got. Yeah, we're all on an even playing field.
Exactly, and I think it was actually the most balanced because it was right when they tried to balance everything out and didn't try to add something new and special for every single codex or for every single faction, right? So the problem with Wh40k, which happened immediately in 8th edition.
So when I saw 8th edition coming out, they said the points weren't going to be in the rulebook.
8th edition, they had indexes.
Yep.
So basically they did kind of the same thing as 3rd edition, where they released the main rule, except obviously it's the new 40 Games Workshop, so it had to be multiple books. So you buy your main rule book, and they said, and then you buy these indexes, and that has all the rules for all
the points for the armies.
Yeah, and the specific rules for the armies. So the main rule book only has the general gameplay rules, which was kind of weird because they shrunk that to super thin.
But I thought they were saying they were going to create a way to keep the points cost of things up to date.
Yes. So that's every year the idea is that they'll release a new book that is basically a FAQ, like updated points for, but not for everything. Like literally, it's just like, here are the things that we patched. We're gonna change the points and stuff like that, which I enjoyed.
But then everything's not in one place at once.
That's the issue. Yeah.
When I first heard that they were going to keep the points separate, I was hoping all the points would be all in one place and all live and up to date.
Exactly.
Which I guess they didn't come through on.
Yeah. So well, they also said those indexes were going to be the main. I don't know. Maybe I didn't interpret it right, but they said this is what you need to play, and we'll keep it up to date. But they didn't mention that they were going to release codexes that totally superseded those rules for the index, and once all of the codexes come out, you should throw out your indexes, which is exactly what was one of the issues in previous editions as we're going, right?
So I guess maybe it's not the most terrible thing, but at least they give you rules for every army to start with. Like at least every army has like a current rule set, as opposed to having to go back to an entirely different edition.
But here's the thing: we're playing right now. I'm playing the orcs, and they're running forward at your Eldar, and
you keep shooting
missiles.
The books,
in the missiles, and they were super effective, which was different than the current modern orc shooting. Modern orc shooting is terrible, but in this one, I literally stopped the
grav tank just couldn't shoot ever.
He couldn't move after the first turn. You got to move the first turn, and then after that, I basically stopped him from doing anything, as you will see, right? And so that I thought was, I don't know, it was interesting and different. And what made it good, though, is that this is from the base rules, right? So they hadn't overcomplicated everything yet, right? So this is very, very simple. This is they tried to boil down the essence of each of the factions, right? And that's what you're playing with. So right now, orcs are supposed to be good in close combat.
Yep, and
they're spammy.
And a Farseer, which sort of buffs units.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's no crazy list of spells going on here.
Yeah, but it was useful spells, right?
Oh, yeah.
So in the later games, they would add a whole bunch of additional powers, but I think the 2 powers you get are basically the best powers the Farseer ever had. It was Guide, and it was the Armor Save one, right?
I think so.
It's basically rerolls on attacks or rerolls on armor saves, which were super useful. So I felt like the essence of both of these armies was there, but every single time they released a codex, they would often break things. For example, I guess it was in 4th edition, the Falcons basically became invincible. Was it 3rd edition? The end of 3rd edition.
It might have been when their codex came out, they got the extra shield that stopped them from ever being...
you take the 2 rolls and you choose the lowest. And that basically, I think it was 2nd edition, but maybe 4th edition, but maybe it was 3rd edition. When they got a codex where they got a special item on the grav tanks, the Falcon, which means like in this version of 40k, tanks only die, like you basically roll a d6 if you penetrate them.
It's an all or nothing roll.
It's an all or nothing roll. Whereas Falcons,
in the current version of the game, giant tanks do not die all in one roll.
Yes.
Not usually.
Yeah, the current one, I don't even want to talk about that. We can talk about that on another podcast.
So that's one of the reasons why we went back to this edition. Okay.
Exactly. The entire tank things were just messed up totally, how you play it out. And so this one, basically they made Falcons unkillable. It doesn't really matter how they do it, but it kind of broke Falcons, and now suddenly that doesn't just affect inter-army balance. It affects
what you take in your own army.
Exactly. So in the Eldar army, suddenly you want to run a lot of Falcons, and you don't really want to run any of this other stuff, which is kind of lame.
Yep. That's why the balance thing I was talking about earlier, that they can make broken things as long as the price isn't broken.
Yeah, exactly. So in this game, we did try to choose some things that were balanced, right? So I did look in the codexes and make sure we didn't choose anything that was obviously points crazy. And it seemed to work out. Like it was...
Yeah, they're pretty varied armies. It's not. There's no min-maxing going on with these things.
And... what did you think about the change with the I go, you go? Because I guess it's not really changed in 40k, but we haven't played a lot of games where I move all of my guys and then you move all of your guys and you can't really do anything. You just take it.
I felt like I had some like really powerful characters, like at the bottom of the board where I've got some of the X archers, and I've got some aspect warriors, and they just got hit by a mob of boys, and they just took it to the face and didn't do anything back. And their shooting kind of sucked on the way in, but like, well, I guess in close combat you do base it on your initiative, but
Yes.
still the fact that you get to shoot on the way in and then attack.
That was it's actually kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, did you feel like the 10 boys with the knobs wiping out your guardians was?
They kind of just like fell over and didn't do anything in retaliation.
To be fair, okay, so your guardians are actually better at shooting, obviously, right?
Yep.
But significantly worse in close combat. And I think overall the points list, because you had 10 guardians and I had 10 boys,
Mm-hmm.
those are around the same price points. So the fact, I did have a truck, right?
Yeah, they showed up in a truck, so it was.
Yeah, and you
much
did
more.
have a chance to blow
And
up
I
the
had a
truck.
chance to blow the entire truck apart, but it failed.
Yeah,
So-
it's kind of fun, right?
so
When
it's
you're playing 40k, it's you do have having the not just infantry and having some vehicles changes up the game quite a bit, and the idea that your vehicles are much tougher to protect the guys inside kind of did make the gameplay interesting, right?
Yeah, that is what makes 40k really. I think what makes 40k cool compared to other minis games is you sort of have tanks and heavy armor to like maneuver around the board, whereas most other games are just like you have your figure and it's your figure.
Well, yeah, because we're playing skirmish games,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the easiest, I guess, for people to launch. Normally, if you want to play something with this many different types of units, you need to go to like 50
You
millimeter.
have to go to a different scale, like drop zone commander.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things that I found kind of annoying about 40k and setting this table up is that it's a 6x4.
Yep.
And so 6 feet by 4 feet is super big, and it was super annoying to set up. Luckily, I have
You have a
pretty
big table.
kitchen table, yeah. But normally, when I was living in the condo, you couldn't. I don't think I even had enough.
You wouldn't be able to
room.
get around the sofa,
I don't
or
think
you wouldn't be able to
yeah.
get between the one wall and the other wall.
Yeah.
If there was any other furniture.
Yeah, it was terrible. But at the same time, when you have such a big board, look at all the terrain we have and how much maneuvering you have, right? Like this board could definitely fit a 1500 by 1500 army, and it would feel like movement really mattered. And you have 48-inch guns, and it actually matters on a
Yeah, if you're going to
table
fire diagonally across the board, which you did a few times,
yeah.
that you care about how far things away are.
Yeah, and the 36 inches, suddenly it doesn't cut it in the size, right?
So the terrain rules in this edition
Uh-huh.
for 3rd edition, I guess it's basically you go by the majority of the guys being in cover or not being in cover.
Yes, that's how we
believe?
played it.
That is how we play it.
We basically looked at the rules for a bit and we're like, I think that's basically it, and it worked fine, right? It was not too hard.
Yeah.
So you just we chose the.
So in this edition, you don't have to have like guys with an area terrain. They just have to be hidden
Oh no! Yeah,
behind terrain.
In 8th edition, that was one of the things that was so annoying, right? Whereas this version, the cover makes sense. If half the guys you can't see are in cover, then you're or the majority of them are in cover, then they get cover, right? And so it feels natural, and it feels like you can actually do something by maneuvering your guys, right? So I had like giant chunks of boys, which you kind of really killed them with all of your Eldar shooting. And I was a little bit worried about
them breaking.
them breaking and just dying before they even reached you, right? Or not having enough guys to hurt you when I reach you. But apparently, at least versus Eldar, Orc close combat is powerful. So
The Elder just flail at them in close combat.
relatively speaking, yes.
Except that, like some of the X archers.
Yeah, they
who will
hear.
hit
So
back
yeah,
harder.
so it was the Phoenix Lord that you had, right? And it wasn't the super fancy Phoenix Lord. It was just the one in the main book. So it was just like a close combat tooled flying hero, and he was actually really good in close combat. He beat up those.
There's tons of attacks, and the orcs
yeah.
are afraid of that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting. But when the orcs actually did hit you, it was pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit actually about. We didn't play.
Exactly 3rd edition.
Yes, we did do some changes because we did remember there were some broken things in 3rd edition.
And some of the future editions had some good things they came up with.
Yeah. So
So one of those was not Overwatch. Third
There was
edition has no Overwatch.
there's
and
no
we
Overwatch.
did not Overwatch.
so but that's just playing third edition.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the things we did were
The running.
running. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a later edition where if you're not, as we talked about having giant boards, right? It was too big. It was almost too big if you're just infantry, because all infantry just moves 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did implement in a later rule set is that I think it was if you're outside of 24 inches of a person, you can run. Basically, you can charge, or just move another 6 inches as during the charge phase.
Yeah.
Now, for us, we kind of modified it a bit. We just said if you're outside of 12 inches, then you can do your run, right? But then you're not allowed to shoot and you're not allowed to charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helped infantry just slog through the slog it.
Helps make the game. There was more maneuvering going on in the game.
Yeah, it does.
It was probably definitely helpful for the orcs too, because they didn't just stand there and get shot turn after turn.
Yes, that's true. So we did change the game, I guess you could say, quite a bit, but it did make the game, I think, quite interesting when we played that through. And yeah, another one was you can't move your truck, jump out, so a vehicle,
And then assault.
because that we remember was ridiculous.
Sort of nonsensical.
Yeah. And then the third one is we removed sweeping assaults. So in this game, there was, in 3rd edition, one of the primary, in my opinion, bad things about the base rule set was if you were in close combat and you killed the whole unit, you could then move 2d6 and sweep into
The next unit and potentially kill that one
and
too.
potentially kill that one, and then continue sweeping through. And there were some rules where you're allowed to shoot them before they swept into you, but it was just so messy.
There'd be multiple close combats from the same unit over and over in the same turn. Yeah.
And yeah, so we just said no, you can't do that. And to be fair, is that a 4th edition or a 5th edition rule? I can't remember if when they removed.
Oh my god, rid of the sweeping advance.
Yeah. Obviously, it wasn't important because they just removed it.
Yeah. You could just move afterwards. You can consolidate after.
Yes.
So we just used the 3-inch consolidation.
Yeah.
So your guys just basically weren't clustered for the next guy's turn, so you wouldn't all died of like template weapons after.
Yes, exactly. So exactly. So how about template weapons?
Going back to the old school template weapons.
Yeah.
So I do know of how they work in 8th edition, where it's entirely based on dice rolls. So I think it did slow the game down a little more, and we had to do some takebacks. We're like, we'll just move our cluster guys together. Like, wait, that makes no sense. We can't cluster our guys everywhere
with this blast marker. So I did. I think that already happened, but I spread out the guys. I had originally moved all of those boys in the middle together. And then
when I started firing the missile from the Viper, we realized that might be a bad idea.
Yes, so we did allow me to spread them out, and then you still hit four or 5 guys or something like that. So it was still powerful, but it wasn't like you hit 10 guys, which was originally how I set it up, because I was just trying to move quickly. So I do really like the new idea in 8th edition, but I think they messed up one major thing, is that the whole point of blast markers is that they're supposed to be stronger against
clusters of people,
clusters of guys, lots
whereas
of guys.
Now it has no relevance.
Exactly. So so I think what they needed to do is, which they actually used this rule in some of the
other
weapons.
Games?
No, some of the weapons. But basically, if you're over 5 or 10 guys
in the squad,
you just if you're shooting a unit that has 5 or 10 guys, you just get more attacks. You get more hits. And I don't know why they didn't just do that for all blast marker weapons. Like, that is what they were supposed to be. They literally just changed how blast templates work.
It's basically a random attack value. Attack.
And so it didn't make sense. Now it's actually kind of good against tanks. Which is because
it generates multiple shots.
Because technically now you're just hitting 3 times.
Yeah, it's like a D3 hit or a D6 hit.
Exactly. So it changed how it's supposed to act. So that was not, in my opinion, a great idea. But so I don't know if they're going to change that now. Who knows?
There's always more additions. They'll probably just keep moving it around.
Yeah, so overall, though, I actually really enjoyed 3rd edition playing this. I felt like we had movement with our one modification, right? And with the cover saves, how the game worked, I felt like movement mattered. I felt like the difference between a shooting army, which was the Eldar on your side,
It played differently than the orcs by a long shot.
on this close combat massed army played interesting. One thing that I found interesting was actually the morale, which in this game,
if you lose, you can lose big time.
yes. So if you lose, if you break, then you just start retreating off the board. And if you hit a board edge, you just disappear.
Which
right?
your bikes managed to do.
Which my bikes managed to do. Yeah, I ran 3 bikes in. One guy died, and 2 of the guys didn't even get to fire. They literally just ran.
They
off
decided
the
they
board.
would never pass their leadership and just kept driving.
To be fair, they only had 2 leadership or 3 leadership tests.
Yeah, there was 3.
So that I did the first one. I failed it. This already happened, I guess, at this point.
That was pretty early on.
Oh yeah, look, I killed the Falcon already.
Yep.
We didn't even talk about that. That was amazing.
It did nothing.
I had literally 2 missiles and blew it up. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how the vehicle combat worked. I'm not actually sure I'm fond of that in 3rd edition.
No, the random
It felt a little bit swingy.
The random occurrence, whether it blows up or whether it can't move.
Yeah, so it almost felt like tanks either were invincible or they just died, right, in this version of the game. So it was a little bit too either or, right? Whereas I like the fact that in the newer edition it kind of wears down. Of course, in 8th edition, I think they messed up the damage ratios or something because the armor piercing weapons don't kill tanks
any better than they kill little people.
They do. They do 3 damage instead of 1 damage, but the tanks end up having like 9 or 8 to like 15, 20 life, depending on how big things go, right?
So if you're trying to kill it with 1 las cannon, it's never gonna happen.
Yeah, 1 las cannon is so much weaker than it used to be, and it's because they changed the damage chart rules.
So now it makes more sense to shoot with lots of like medium power weaponry to take it down.
Yes, medium power weaponry is now stronger, and the tiny weaponry, right? The las guns, because las guns are not supposed to be able to kill a tank, but they changed the rules to mean every 1 in 6 las gun shots will hurt a tank, will take off 1 wound.
Yep.
You have to therefore give each of your tanks way more life to make it
compensate for mass fire coming from.
But a las cannon still only does on average 3.5 wounds.
So you can shoot with like 18 las pistols and eventually do about the same damage.
Well, they have armor save as well, so that kind of
not quite.
Yeah, it's not quite, but at the same time, there's a lot of las guns and stuff like that, right? So it's just the ratio is all messed up.
Yeah,
right?
it favors like medium power.
Yeah, so I felt weapons. Like in 3rd edition the strength of the tanks seemed, I don't know, there needed to be a balance in between those 2 things, right? I don't think 3rd edition got it perfectly, and I don't think 8th edition got it perfectly.
Yeah. So that's our thoughts on the 1 tank we took.
And the fact that it was,
and the truck that drove across the board and didn't get killed.
The truck almost won me the game, or at least tied me the game, because it got hit a couple times and then it ran off and it just held its own for the mission. So, what else is happening right now? Oh, yeah. You almost killed my war boss, but he kind of ran in and joined up with a unit, which is kind of interesting that you can do in this edition. That heroes, if they're by themselves, they can get killed, but if they
join a unit, you take off the schlubs
you can
first.
choose to kill the schlubs first, and I think that's actually how the current edition works too. There was some weird stuff in between where I don't know how they chose it. It was like you could, if you have knobs, 2 wound guys, you can give each guy a wound so that no one dies until half of the wounds are
until
done.
It circles around to everybody.
Yeah, and that ended up being broken, and it was some weird technicality why you could do that. But in this version, it was just take off 1 guy, and if you're in close combat, which we messed up, which allowed the Phoenix Lord to just wipe the boys, is you have to in close combat, it's a little bit more targeted, right? You have to kill the guys that are
kill the
closest.
guys in the front line.
Yeah, kill the
Who are
guys
actually
in
in
the front line
contact with
first.
the enemies.
Yes. So I thought that with those two balances, I thought it was actually pretty good. You have some targeting in close combat, and then in shooting, you just don't, right? Which kind of makes sense.
A bit of sense. You don't know who's who.
You can't
in the
really
battle.
target people shooting, but once you're close up, now it
You can
really
see
matters.
who's who. Who's got the
stab
stupid
the guy.
Who's got the stupid power fist that's going to kill you.
Exactly. Yeah. So it worked out. I think quite good. Oh, you did have a second vehicle. You had the Viper.
Yes, I had the Viper. I don't see it
Yeah,
as a
so you
vehicle.
had
It's
two
so
vehicles.
it's so
It was total. It's
so unarmored.
It's just as tough as my truck.
I know.
And that was the
makes-
one thing that you wanted to do to basically you're trying to win the game, right?
Yeah, by hunting the truck down with the
Yeah,
Viper.
if your Viper was able to kill my truck, then you would win. Otherwise, and I had the chance to basically do the opposite. In my turn, if I could kill the Viper in the end of the game, I would have won.
Yeah, so I think by the end I tried to drive the Viper into the middle of the board to get range on the truck.
Yeah, because you were last,
And
right?
then it got shot with some junk and stopped working.
Did it?
Yeah, I think so.
No. You I thought you couldn't get. Oh, maybe.
On the last turn, I was trying to get one last shot off to get rid of it.
Yeah, because
But
we're like, you might as well just run it and try it for the win.
Exactly.
Right?
Forget the tie.
Yeah, so it was overall quite fun though. Simple, straightforward, a lot less complicated than all these weird stratagems and stuff like that. Some stratagems is okay, but I feel like in the new game they flooded it with these. Everyone has their own special rules, and you have basically a deck of cards of rules that you can spend your command points for.
You can use it at any time.
Yeah, and I don't know I guess they liked the idea so much they went overboard, and now every faction has, I think, 2 or 3 that were shared, which were fine, like reroll dice and stuff like that. But then they said every faction should have like 20 or so different stratagems that you can use, and let's not balance them. So literally, I guess a subset of them are situational, which is still a lot, like 10, and then 3 or 4 of them are super amazing. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having all these different ones.
And it feels like it's separate from your actual troops. Like it's not the troops having the ability. It's some like magic coming from on high, which doesn't even feel like it fits in with what's happening on the table.
Yeah, they
like
overused
if it was a psychic thing, I could see it being kind of cool. Well, basically, it sounds like psychic powers coming from a non-psyker that doesn't even exist on the board.
Yeah.
So what's happening right now? Do you remember?
Oh yeah. So this is where we realized the rule about you can actually target a guy.
So we had to go back and play something over again.
Yeah. So your Phoenix Lord basically killed a whole bunch of boys, but he should have been
killing the Power Fist rather than
yes,
waiting.
But I left the Power Fist there that was standing right next to him, and then in the game actually you should have been able to charge the Power Fist guy, killed him.
Yeah, because the Phoenix Lord was hiding behind the front line of troops, so he came in afterwards.
Yes, so he could have chosen
so
who
when
he was
moved
in,
he would have moved in to get the Power Fist.
Yeah, which we did not do, and so that's what we did, and by doing that, basically the Phoenix Lord just killed everyone, killed the Power Fist guy, and then later on, you see here he killed the Power Fist and the other guy. He didn't die in
then
return,
the rest broke,
and the rest of the guys, because of that, they broke because they didn't kill the Phoenix Lord. And so that actually changed the game a lot, which I think overall the rule set was quite good. It's quite polished. Like again, we did a couple tweaks, but
the having your whole unit killed when they break and get overrun might be a bit harsh.
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere in between is good. At the same time, you don't totally get killed, right? When you do that, you just start breaking off the board, and if you reach the end of the board, you die. Oh, unless in close combat.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Where that becomes super harsh.
You fail the initiative roll. So you fail
your leadership when you lose the combat.
Yes, and then you try and run away.
If
your opponent rolls higher than you when he tries to catch you, then you get wiped off the board.
So
that is pretty harsh. But that made close combat super powerful, right? I remember in this edition. And that's why swing advances were crazy.
Yes, that too. You don't even have to kill everybody. You just kill enough that they get freaked out. Yeah, and then 50-50, you run faster than them and you kill them all.
Yeah, and you break them. And then you sweep literally into the next guy.
Thing. And in the previous combat, you've, of course, spread out enough to get to the next unit you're aiming for.
Yeah.
So just one guy gets in there and then starts
Yeah,
everybody
starts
in
everything
two
over
starts,
again.
keeps
Yeah.
fighting.
Yeah. Well,
And you bring things that freak your opponent out too, like death masks and things that give your opponent negative leadership, hoping they'll just break from it. Like there's some abilities in the game
oh, okay. I don't remember
that will
those.
freak out your opponent and drop their leadership by a bit.
I was playing Elder at that time. I don't
Yeah.
think they had any of that.
You don't think that
They
Howling
probably just got
Banshees had
affected.
any scary masks?
No, the scary masks allowed them to attack first, always, in close combat, which was not that useful because they were Howling Banshees. They had initiative 6, so like...
So what? Who are you attacking here? Well, if you're attacking their big characters,
if you're attacking Gene Stealers, I think, was like the only time we were like, oh yeah, I guess this Howling Banshees are now their ability is useful. Oh, and this is near the end of the game where I decided I got so into the game because it was really fun that I forgot we were recording and I literally just blocked the end of the game. And this is where we talked about the Viper goes around.
The Viper on the left hand side.
Yeah, it's trying to swoop around and get in a position where he can kill the truck. Or is this when we're gonna... Oh no, this is when I was trying to kill the Rangers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was the last few guys left on the board.
Yeah, this is the second last turn.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're only a few guys were left. And I know I did say that in 8th edition they play until one side is dead. But one interesting thing is here when we did this...
It was very close to that state.
It was close, but it was far enough away that I didn't think, even if we played another round or two, we wouldn't have wiped each other.
No, the troops, both
There's
of our
not
sides,
as much, like,
both of our
smashy-
sides had whittled down so much. It didn't really swing to one side or the other. Like if it swung to one side, I can see one side being wiped out, because then you just wouldn't have enough firepower to bring your opponent down at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I can see these games going to like complete wipeouts.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just because we only played one and it didn't happen. But I just feel like it's less. It just felt less.
The power output, the power output wasn't as deadly as
the current
edition, as the 3rd edition.
Yeah, and maybe it's because you also don't have the big guys and all these different kind of crazy firepower. Because remember, we only played from the based armies in the book, which didn't have crazy, super awesome combo abilities, right? And the thing is, I guess not to belabor the point, but there was still enough differences in the armies that they felt unique.
Yeah, all the troops felt pretty unique.
Yeah, and it made me kind of think,
well,
do you really need to have every single one of your units have a special snowflake rule and with all these special stratagems and stuff to have everything super unique, and my guy has to be like super different than your guys and stuff like that, and my hero has to be absolutely customized so it's only ever going to be my guy with these pieces of war gear.
So when you've got all that stuff, you've got to worry about like the combo that's going on the table, the superpower on the table, as opposed to just like how do you move your guys around the board like some intelligent way. And
if it makes a real difference, then that's something that you have to remember for your opponent and yourself, when really, why should that... I don't know. It doesn't really change the strategy of the game. And if you want to model your guy one way, like sure, that's awesome, right? You want to make it look cool, but do you really need all these super special rules? It kind of slows the game down a lot. Oh, here's the Viper, by the way, of trying to take that one shot. I basically ran away with
running
my
into
truck.
danger.
Running into danger.
He's now running
to
towards
one shot.
He's running towards your war boss now, isn't it? Because your war boss is still in the middle.
No, to my boys.
Oh, your boys are left in the middle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'm trying to block it so that just in case you succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's no evidence.
You can't see my victory dance. No.
Yeah, but
there was no victory dance.
Yeah, spoilers. It was a tie game, which was also kind of cool, which I did not expect, and I don't think it happens as much in 8th edition. Maybe it does, but it was just... No, actually, the first game I played, I think I tied as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was good, and it was. People talk about how 8th edition kind of streamlined things, but that was streamlined compared to 7th edition. Because when we take 3rd edition is very streamlined. Everything worked great, and if you remember, all of the codexes for all the factions were very small. So even once you got your special snowflake rules, they didn't go overboard.
Yeah, they were like little paperback things with a staple in them. They weren't tomes at all.
Exactly. So you just had a couple of things to make things a little bit more unique. I don't know. I just enjoyed the game more at that point, and in some ways, it kind of changed people's outlook on what they wanted in a game. So, when you make things, oh, that's over. When you make your army look cool, you're making it look cool to make it look cool, not so that you gain some sort of competitive advantage in the game.
So, I seem to recall in this version of the game, like the size of the guy matters as well if you can see them.
That's still how it works.
Yep. Okay, that's interesting, and I wouldn't encourage it in another edition. But
yeah, I think they should have just said it should be around the size of the. Just imagine it's the normal size of a normal model. And I know in some ways, like if it's a dreadnought or something, there's some
it can be
modifications.
twice as big as the base sometimes.
Yeah, but I do remember people complaining about model for advantage, which
once you make the cannon stick out longer from.
No, shorter. Because you wanted to make them as small as possible.
And you don't want to get hit around the corner.
Yeah. So you have guys who are huddled on the ground and all lying straight on the floor, just huddling there, so that they have the smallest profile possible. So you only shoot when you want to shoot, and they can't
see you easily around a corner.
Yeah. So, I don't know how you. Well, you solve it with silhouettes, like a lot of games use. Like War Machine uses that. Infinity uses that. Most games that we've played, besides Games Workshop games have moved away from that. It's just
it gives you more freedom to model your guy.
Yeah,
and there's less ambiguity in the gameplay.
Yeah, and so it kind of, I don't know, by dividing those two things, in my opinion, it helps give people the feeling like when they go all in on making their stuff look beautiful, they only have to care about making it look beautiful, which I really, really enjoyed.
Okay. So I think we liked all the changes we made to the third edition. I think that edition was fun.
Yeah, and I think after playing it, I actually think I enjoy third edition with the couple of changes that we did more than 8th edition.
So you'd call it 38K?
I think 38K is the best.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We enjoyed this game of Warhammer as well.
Yeah, it was fun to get a blast from the past, play all those things, look at my two armies fighting. That was super fun. We hadn't played with my Eldar in super long. So it was fun to break those guys out. Yeah.
All right. I think that's everything we wanted to talk about for our thoughts on what 40K could be.
or what it was, and how maybe they shouldn't have thrown so much out. Maybe they should have just gone. They should have taken more from their old game.
Or maybe we're just old.
Yes,
anyhow,
exactly.
Thanks for listening.
All right. This is B and Alan.
And this was Brandon.
See ya.